Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by the Art of Education University, and I'm your host, Tim Bogans. I am excited to welcome back an old friend to the podcast today. Andrea Slusarski is here to talk about all things creativity. Now, I first met Slu back in probably 2013, and we collaborated on a few cool things inside and outside of AOEU, and she's been on the podcast quite a few times, but it has been a minute since her last appearance. But we were both at NAEA in San Antonio a couple of months ago. We got the chance to catch up, and she was kind enough to agree to come back on the podcast and actually record some of the awesome discussions that we were having on creativity. This is probably going to be a long episode, so I want to just go ahead and get started. Let's do it. Let me bring on Slu right now. Right, Andrea Slusarski is back on the show. Slu, welcome back. How are you?
Hi. I'm excited to be back. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a long while, but I'm super excited that you're here again. Can you just, I guess, give us an update on what you're doing, what you're teaching, just kind of what you're focused on right now?
Yeah, I'm super stoked. I'm really fortunate. I have lots of really cool things going on. I'm currently an assistant professor of art education at Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design here in Denver, still in Colorado. I'm focusing on creativity and why that's so critical for not just learning in the classroom, but also in building intrinsic motivation for lifelong learning in everyone.
Yeah.
It's kind of like my grand evil plan as an art teacher. It's like, how can I get more people stoked on their creative selves?
Love it.
And my evil hands. I'm digging in more specifically with that when it comes to connecting with your creative self through visual journaling practices and flow state psychology. I get to kind of really get into that meta level of teaching with my undergraduates as an assistant professor.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really excited to be sharing my experiences as a high school teacher, my experiences as an artist, and helping set up the next generation of art teachers, which sounds so weird to say because
it's a great way to think about it, though. That's incredible.
Because I'm starting to get a few gray hairs, I guess.
Well, that's all right, because I have all of the gray hairs, and you know what? I've just come to accept it. I'm fine.
Getting there. And then, and most recently I gave a presentation with my colleagues on the National Art Ed, the NAEA's Professional Learning Through Research group that I'm on, which is super cool. I gave that on visual journaling for art teachers, more specifically.
Yeah.
At the Springs National Conference, which is where I ran into you. And we were like, we need to talk. I have a lot of thoughts.
Right, because, we just got into a little conversation, a little reunion, which was fun. And then all of a sudden that turned into, we have to do a podcast together. And I'm super excited that we're able to do that. So it's good. So let's talk about creativity. I guess I'll just start with just a big question to kind of set the stage. So just thinking about, how you wrap your mind around this. Like, how do you personally conceptualize or define creativity? And then second part would be how is your conceptualization? How is that different from what your students are thinking, what your students think of it?
Yeah, this is a cool question. And, when I was reflecting on it, it made me think of this example and sort of exercise I have my fresh, art ed babies go through in my so I teach the psychology of creativity, which is like I went into professorship like this is where I want to focus. This is where I think I can make the most impact with art teachers.
Yeah.
And so I personally, and I share this with students, like this is like day one, like they're in the school of SLU, is that I think of creativity a lot like pizza.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go. Tim, you ready? Okay, so like both terms, pizza and creativity, are similar in that we don't have one universal definition. So I want you to imagine your favorite slice of pizza and keep that in your brain because I'm going to ask you at the end.
Okay.
And this is what I have students do, right? Like I have all my art ed undergraduates in the classroom or even online in a discussion board. And I'm like, imagine your favorite slice of pizza. And from that, we come to a general consensus that we all followed a general formula. In our head, we all have a crust, a sauce, a topping. That means that we're talking about pizza.
Yeah.
While also kind of taking note that each person's favorite pizza is most likely going to be impacted by their own experiences and cultures.
Right.
Like my favorite piece of pizza I can only get in the Midwest where I'm from. And it's a breakfast pizza at a gas station. Like that's weird to like my students here in Colorado.
Well, being from Omaha, let me just say, I don't know. Are we talking Casey's gas station pizza, by the way?
It is like such an example of like pure creative acts that I can't even. I dream about it.
Yeah, like I don't know if I would say it's my favorite, but like being from Omaha, right in the middle of the country, like I'm well acquainted with Casey's gas station pizza and it's freaking delicious. Like it's so good.
It's so good. And creative works can be defined a lot like that too.
Yeah.
And so this is where, I take students through this thought experiment. They're all laughing at me about my Casey's pizza. They're all still holding their pizza in their head. And I'm like, so we can look at, a huge psychologist in studying creativity, Dean Kane Simonton from the University of California. He writes that, creativity is originality times usefulness. So if we had like a pizza sauce topping equation, is it original and is it useful? That's creative. Okay.
Right.
And then defining creativity and where I like to conceptualize it, where I like to think of creativity is like here it becomes a myriad of possibilities. And we have personal experiences, histories, cultures, and present day combined with like various disciplines to be the ultimate combinations of toppings to your creative pizza. Like it's exponential.
Right. Yeah.
So like if we only experienced one slice of pizza, how boring would that be?
Yes.
Right? And defining and studying creativity is important because it allows us that language knowledge to learn about it so that we can kind of discover our unique recipes. And I find that like a majority of my students, they fall into a common misconception about creativity that it equals just their art skills.
Oh, yeah.
And their art alone.
Yep.
And that if they're not selling oil paintings in like a gallery, that they're not creative. And I just kind of come along and I'm like, let's reflect on a better way because, and then they share their favorite pizzas, right? And we notice that everyone's is different.
Right.
And I don't have to like your favorite pizza, Tim. Like, right? And that's what's like so amazing about it and such like a bigger way to embrace creativity for me because as an art teacher, there's there could be 40 humans in that classroom that are all going to have their own slice of pizza.
Right.
So what's your favorite pizza? What's your top?
All right. I'm going a deep dish pizza, like Chicago style deep dish with just a lot of meat on it. Just really savory. Like that's going to be my favorite, I think.
It's sacrilege for me to say being from Chicagoland.
Right.
but I think Detroit style pizza is
Wow. Okay.
it's the
Okay.
hill I'll die on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm a little shook hearing that
I
from
know.
you, but again, it goes back. That's a good lesson for me on accepting other people's modes of creativity and where they're coming from. So I think that's good. I mean, that's quite the extended analogy. We just talked about it for like 8 minutes, but I think it's a really good analogy. I think it works really well, and it's a good way to kind of explain all of that to students. So let me ask you this though. So as kids are coming to sort of understand creativity when they first come to the school of SLU, I believe you called it,
Mhm.
what are they struggling with the most when it comes to creativity? Like, what do you think is holding them back?
It's definitely that way of thinking that I shared, that it's like I have to be like this professional artist to
Mm-hmm.
even call myself creative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is where I really focus my teaching and my whole design of my course at, because it's important for me to help my students kind of get into their inner self
Yeah.
of themselves as a creative, like what's their creative process? What do they do? What do they need? So that they can better apply that outside as an art teacher, so they can have a better language to talk about it. And one of my favorite, you know, conceptualizations of creativity to dive into is from Kaufman and Becchetto. I'm not always positive if I pronounce those right, so
Right.
I apologize. But they break down creativity into a quadrant, and that's super like helpful for my students to kind of get this like, oh. And so what those four kind of things are, and I'll walk you through. I told you I have so much to share, Tim.
I'm excited about this. I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to hear about this
I,
quadrant here.
I see you. I think I see a visual journal, and I'm really excited because you know me. I'm like, take your notes.
Yeah.
They break down creativity into four levels, and they are little c and big C, which I'll describe first. Those ones came first.
Okay.
It's been updated with mini C and pro C, which are also helpful ways of thinking of creativity. Because what they essentially do is remind us of like kind of where we are and like the skill level that's needed for each level of creativity. And so then I define it. And I start with my favorite, and that's little c. And that's the other hill I'm going to die on, is that you need more little c in your life. These are everyday creative acts, and they are not limited to visual works.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone can access creativity here, and the more little c's, the better. And remember, it needs to be original and useful.
Right.
So if you're the mom making lunches for your kids in the morning, and you're like, drawing a little goofy face on the banana,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's like a little C moment that's really important, right?
Right.
And so for teachers, I think this is why I love the little c, because when you're teaching and you're in the school year, you may not have time for like extended times drawing or extended times doing bigger creative acts. But you can be aware of those little c that you're kind of doing throughout your day.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Because the contrast is big C, and these are like the names we're going to remember. They're Beyonce. They're Georgia O'Keeffe. They're Steven Spielberg, Tina Fey. They're Taylor
Mm-hmm.
Swift, which I could do a whole podcast with you if you want on how Taylor Swift is the most creative thing that's happened to our world. And many other people that you can recall based on their creative pursuits. But I like distinguishing little c and big C because we often compare ourselves to big C people.
Yeah.
And big C is also the culmination of their entire body of work. Like Beyonce does little C acts. Like,
Right.
right? Like Beyonce can't, like Taylor Swift is like doing little C acts in her writing of songs. She
Mm-hmm.
doesn't just wake up and make an album.
Right. Right.
But if we only think of creativity as big C, like that's hard to attain. And then the other two categories, they distinguish further levels of creativity. So pro C is creatives who've reached a professional level. And I like sharing this with students too, because like this comes from years of experience and training, and pro C people could have like really happy lives and careers and never be big C people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay. Like that's totally fine. And then for art teachers, and I especially think of parents here, mini C is like this like really special level of creativity. It's not so much, it's like not always a little C, because what's different about mini C is that it's just really important to the creator.
Just
So
like
they're both
things you're doing for yourself.
things you're doing maybe for the first time.
Okay.
Like, right? Like for all like the kindergartner art teachers out there, like have you ever seen a student like lose their mind with like a new art medium? Like
Right.
like that's mini C. Someone taking their first steps, someone taking their first words, like those are original and appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
First draw, like there's places for all sorts of creativity, and like expanding our language about it by kind of knowing that there's different buckets for it to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can just be more intentional about it, I feel. And it's like really easy to then like after you've broken that down, you've shared research, right? Like I'm not just like saying like think of it this way. Like no, like psychology research this. Like they've like let's learn from these studies. When you're just starting to learn, comparing yourself to big C is just silly.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, actually, let me ask you this,
Okay.
because I feel like our students are doing that all the time. You know, like I'm never going to be as creative as this, or there's no way I can get to that level. So, I'm thinking like how do we help students get past those blocks? Like how can we help them see all of the different types of creativity that are out there, the little C's, the mini C's, the things that they're doing every day? Like how do we help them see those, appreciate those, and find what works for them?
Mm-hmm. Permission and then design.
Okay.
And so like going big first, like right, like I'm gonna go big in like an idea here and get a little wild. Like permission is like what we really need.
Yeah.
As a human, you are creative. Journaling, reflecting, discussing, doing what you need to do to figure out what makes your creative light beam. Like that's a lifelong process.
Right.
And that's gonna change. Right. And so, however, as an art teacher, I do think we have some skills to help equip our students for that type of learning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm just like always so stoked on art ed, is that like through design, through understanding these big ideas that art can help us understand, we can help our students, or at least I try to help my students get through these roadblocks through backwards design.
Okay.
I'm constantly asking myself, how can I design creative connections here? And I feel like I've been talking about this with you for like 8 years. Like I love tricking my
Right.
students.
Right.
Like when they don't realize that like the whole class period has gone by because they were like so involved in like the exercise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that like that's designed. And I love being like, "Oh, I didn't know that was going to happen." Like it's fun for students. Right? And then so like how that looks for me is like I call them creative exercises.
Mm-hmm.
I think like, what do I want students to be thinking about here? Or how could I design a visual journaling habits that can help my students reflect or kind of find those connections? Um, I use discussions and reflection prompts to get them deeper in their thinking
Yeah.
and connection making. I think it's important to have a little structure. Like, for example, my instructions for my online assignments are organized by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's phases of creativity,
Yeah.
right? It's step 1 is prepare, step 2 is incubate, insight, evaluation, elaboration.
Yep.
And then what's really funny is like it's not until week 6 that they actually learn about those. So my students are doing those steps every week. And then we get to week 6 and they have like a light bulb where
I
they're
was
like,
going to say, does it dawn on them? They're like, oh, this is what we've been doing the whole time.
it's like my favorite thing when like a student's
Yeah.
like, did you know the assignment steps are the phases of creativity? And I'm like, oh, how did that happen? But then, there's also like, this is where like being intentional and like really being thoughtful here is hard, because then you have to also allow like little choice and openness.
Yeah. Yep.
Like I have one foot in structure and one foot in punk.
Mm-hmm.
For example, this last spring, I had a student. I have framework. I have steps for their creative response. Like, right, like I want them to create something. I want them to design something that shows me their definition of creativity.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I got tired of reading papers about it. I was like, make an art, like make something, show me.
Yeah.
And I had a student compose an audio response of like them playing their instrument with some like recordings they took on a walk, with like an Alan Watts quote they were inspired by.
Okay.
Right? Like the structure was they had to like give me one quote from like one side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, boy, did they, blew my mind. But like that's what's always kind of hard with like these creative roadblocks, is because I don't know, creativity's hard and you never want to limit a student. So you have to just kind of be really intentional as an art teacher and like providing the structure that's needed for them to achieve like creative thinking, but also like stepping out of the way and being like, this is on you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I want to ask you about something, because I'm just kind of thinking about, I guess, the intersection between creativity and art. You talked about all the different ways that we can be creative, and I'm just thinking about whether or not that translates into the artwork that they're creating. So I guess like after we see students kind of finding their way creatively, they're discovering their talents or activating their creativity. Like, how can we help them transfer that or translate that into their artwork? And I guess too, the question is like, should we help them translate that into their artwork, or do you think like the other creative pursuits should stay separate from art making, or like, and we just let that creativity stand on its own? Does that all make sense? I don't know. It's a big question.
It is a big question, and I feel like I've already reflected on a bigger answer for you. So I hope everyone is like, this is like a point in my class when I'd be like, buckle your helmet.
Right.
But because, wow, it is really deep. And like my gut instinct is to respond with like the hard shell, soft shell taco question. Like, pork Manolo's dotes. Like,
right.
Like I find myself answering that, like I go back to that, like, what is that, like a 1998 commercial?
Right.
Remember that? Like,
you obviously like your food analogies. Like it's good.
And I think that's like an example that I would say of like, how do you show students that it's not just art, I am
Mm-hmm.
so intentional with my analogies and I'm so intentional with my examples that, like, in my psychology of creativity course, like 10% of the examples of creatives I share are actually visual artists.
Okay.
Like, I go out of my way to invite teachers to come talk to us about creativity,
Mm.
chefs, musicians. Um, I had a friend who came and talked to us about structure, and they're a UI UX designer, right? So,
Yeah.
like, show students that people are using creativity bigger. Because I think what you asked me is an and answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a yes and a yes.
Yeah.
That your students' talents and have like hobbies or interests are exactly what they should be exploring and expressing.
Yeah.
And this is where flow state psychology has been just so key in my teaching career. Because even as like when I myself was an undergraduate, right? Like some of my first flow experiences were not in art making.
Okay.
They were riding my snowboard.
Mm.
And they were when I was drawing in my sketchbook at home. And flow state, just to clarify, because it's used a lot. It's a big old buzzword, and I love that it is
Yeah.
because we can all get there, but like there's an asterisk with flow state that I want to that I always share with students. You have to have like a matched like skill level with the matched challenge to get there. And so like sometimes you're not gonna like flow isn't just like this magical thing that I can just sparkle on you.
Yeah.
It takes like falling on your snowboard a lot, right? But it's this state of mind in which we all people can feel and become fully immersed in an activity. And that's my classroom quote unquote management.
Yeah.
Right? Like no one's goofing around when they're like having fun and like flowing because the exercise is like I said, I'm tricking them. And so when you help connect those similar feelings outside of the classroom, like your question of like, do we pull these other things? You're helping your students see themselves as creatives.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, art making, and this is like another example, because another way you can experience flow for people that are like, I've never experienced that. Well, like, have you ever been driving and then been like, whoa?
Right.
Oh, I don't remember the last half hour. Ooh. Right, like that's flow essentially. It's just not the glamorous version.
Fair. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just your skill sets of driving and probably the challenge of you driving that specific road. You kind of got immersed in that activity.
Mm-hmm.
But, art making is my vehicle to flow.
Yeah.
And that's how I think that I can feel my most creative self is when I can tap into that flow feeling. And so I offer art making as an art teacher as exactly that. It's a vehicle for you to try out. But ideally, I want you to connect it to your own experiences with creativity. Because I am never going to play basketball as great as Michael Jordan. But I can still learn a couple of things and still have fun playing the game.
Yep. Yep.
Just like you may not ever feel super confident in your watercolor painting abilities. Your favorite example, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that doesn't mean that you can't have a literacy experience.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that it doesn't teach you about what you want to pursue in your lifelong learning. And you may be just like, you know what, I'm not a great, watercolor painter, but I really did love learning about color theory because I love putting my outfits together.
Yeah.
And so to your question of like, should other pursuits stay separate from art making and like let creative pursuits stand on their own? I just think like it comes to like just being intentional that art does not equal creativity, because drawing is difficult.
True.
And if it is difficult for you, that doesn't automatically take your human creative card away. Right? And if we're not purposeful or intentional with our language or our approaches or our classroom design as art teachers, we could unintentionally build that limiting belief.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point. And something that we need to be conscientious of. And yeah, okay. Sorry, you're giving me a lot to think about here. So
and that's where I like sports analogies too with students.
Yeah.
And that was always a good way for me. And I'm, now I'm thinking of like my high school students, like the beginning of drawing is also really boring.
It is. Yeah.
And people want to jump right into playing the game. But like when you talk about it with like someone, by high school, there's students in your classroom that have been playing a sport for almost 10 years.
Right.
Like, right? Like that's more, that's more in their learning psychology than drawing is at this moment.
For sure.
And so if you can kind of like share like, well, I think you're super creative. I watched you play soccer last night. And when you started playing soccer in 3rd grade, were you as good as you are now?
Yeah.
Did you feel flow in 4th grade, 5th grade? And they're like, oh, no, miss. And I'm like, that's kind of where you're at in drawing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps students. Then they can show up and then they don't have to have so much of a fear of a failure.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, great example. Okay, one last question for you. As we wrap this up, obviously we're very deep into conversation here, and I guess my question is like, how do we help our students and maybe even parents? Like, how do we help them understand this conversation? Like, how can we help them identify creativity, and how can we help them work toward being more creative?
Yeah. Well, this I think is where I'm really trying with my undergraduates, just to give them like a good start in their teaching careers.
Yeah.
Because I think it starts with you. How are you modeling creativity in your classroom and your daily actions? Think about your language, I think is important. Think about your examples that you're putting in front of students. Is there, someone not in visual art that you could show?
Yeah.
And then I also, think about like showcasing process, showcasing the, not the final polished version.
Mm-hmm.
And then talk about creativity and create, opportunities for fun and engagement with your community. Invite them in that like, hey, like in our art room, like everyone's creative. Let's show you. And then my last kind of thing is that like, I like to give people something deeper to think about. I don't know if that makes sense,
Yeah.
And like, how can you be the creative leader? For example, like, I like wish I had a nickel for any time a parent was like, well, I can't draw. My kid must be crappy in class. And I'm like, oh God, you're like ripping my art teacher heart out and stomping it in front of me. But like, what if your response wasn't just like, because that's what I used to be. I'm like 24 and I'm like, weird thing to say to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what if it like kind of was just like, we're trying to stop that way of thinking in art.
Mm-hmm.
Or we do way more than just draw.
Yep, that was
Realistically.
always my go-to response is like art class is about way more than just drawing.
Yeah, and just, it can just be simple and sweet and leave everyone with something to noodle on about art, which I don't think is always a bad thing.
Yeah, for
And,
sure.
you have permission to do that. Your permission from Slu. You can be like, Slu said I can.
No, that's awesome. I'll take the permission. That's good. No, anytime we can just sort of turn that question, that comment around and, turn it into just a little piece of advocacy for what we're doing in our classroom. I think that's a really good thing. So yeah, seize on that permission, seize on that opportunity, and we'll be better off for it. So, all right. Well, Slu, thank you so much for the conversation today. I appreciate you diving deep into all of this with me. I know you're passionate about it, and it was great to hear that passion come through, and also just some of the things that you're doing that I think can translate into classrooms for people. So thank you for all of that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
All right. I appreciated that entire conversation with Slu, and I'm so glad she was able to come back on the podcast just after being away for so long. And honestly, just so many takeaways from what she had to say. I love the pizza analogy. I think that's an incredible way to think about creativity and explain creativity to our students. I love the creativity quadrants. That also just explains so much, and I don't know, gives me a lot to think about, a lot to process, a lot to talk about with students. And I think more than anything, though, it's just worthwhile to think about how we are going to be giving students the tools they need to think about creativity, to understand what creativity is, to understand and, activate their own creativity and the ways in which they are creative. And, how do we think about that ourselves? How do we model that for our students with what we talk about, with what we do, with what they're seeing us say and do? And I think all of those questions are worth reflecting on and worth thinking about as we move forward here. So a huge thank you to Slu for bringing them up in conversation today. Art Ed Radio is produced by the Art of Education University with audio engineering from Michael Crocker. Amanda and I will be back next week with the July mailbag. There's still time to get questions in if you have anything pressing or anything you want us to answer. So email me at timothyvogans@theartofeducation.edu if you have a question, or you can leave us a voice message at 515-209-2595, and we'll see if we can fit you into the mailbag next week. All right. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you then.